She arrived early in the morning when the sun was still soft and warm, brushing over the rooftops of the city. Her uniform was simple and worn, not out of choice but out of necessity. Every morning she tied her hair back carefully, making sure no strand fell into her face as she moved through the large house she worked in. The house was grand, with tall windows that caught the sunlight, and every corner seemed to glimmer with a kind of wealth that made her small world feel even smaller. From the first day she stepped into this household, she was aware of the difference between herself and the people who lived there. They moved with ease and elegance, their voices calm and confident, their laughter like music. She moved quietly, almost invisible, sweeping the floors, dusting the furniture, and washing dishes with careful attention. The children often ignored her, running past her with their toys and laughter. The adults sometimes smiled politely, but their smiles never reached their eyes, and there were others who laughed at her mistakes, small slips that she felt sharply in her chest. She was careful to do everything right, but even that was not always enough to earn respect. She kept to herself mostly. She had learned early on that speaking too much drew attention she did not want. When she was mocked, she smiled faintly, nodded, and carried on. The mocking came in small ways at first. A dropped spoon would be met with a loud sigh. A forgotten instruction would be repeated in a tone that made it clear they believed she could not understand. She learned to move with the rhythm of the household, noticing where laughter and voices rose and staying out of their way. Still, every small act of ridicule stung like a tiny thorn, and she tucked those stings away inside, hiding them from the world. Despite the long hours and constant scrutiny, she found small moments of peace. Sometimes it was when she looked out of the tall windows watching the streets below where people hurried about their lives. Sometimes it was in the quiet of the kitchen, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator, the gurgle of water, the faint clatter of dishes. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was near the grand piano in the living room. The piano was a large, elegant instrument that seemed almost sacred in the way it dominated the space. She would pass by it quietly, her fingers brushing the keys, careful not to make a sound. There was something about the smooth black and white keys, the way they responded to touch, that called to her in ways words never could. The children had never seen her touch the piano in earnest. They thought of her as just the maid, someone who cleaned, cooked, and served. The adults were too busy with their own lives to notice her beyond the work she did, and so she learned to keep her talent hidden, a secret wrapped tightly around her heart. Music had always been a part of her life, a refuge from harsh words and lonely nights. She had practiced in secret, learning from old books and memories of a distant teacher. Every note she played was a piece of herself that no one else knew existed. Her life in the house was a careful balance. She rose early to begin her work, never missing a task, never letting her mind wander too far. The floors needed sweeping, the dishes needed washing, the windows needed dusting. She moved quickly, silently, efficiently. Every task was done with care, but she always left a small margin of time for herself. Moments when she could glance at the piano, when she could hum a tune quietly to herself. Those moments were precious, a secret world where she could be herself, free from judgment or ridicule. She remembered the first time she realized just how much she loved music. She was a child, sitting on a small wooden stool in a dimly lit room. A teacher had shown her the keys, had guided her fingers over them, had let her hear the sounds that could come from something so simple and yet so profound. Her heart had leapt in ways she could not explain. From that day on, she practiced whenever she could, sometimes sneaking moments in the early morning before anyone else woke, sometimes staying up late after her family had gone to sleep. Music became a lifeline, a language she could speak even when the world seemed to ignore her. In the house where she now worked, she felt the same excitement every time she approached the piano. But she was careful. She knew what people thought of her, and she did not want to risk their ridicule. Still, the temptation was strong. When the house was quiet, when the family was away or occupied with other matters, she would place her hands gently on the keys, closing her eyes and letting the music flow. It was in those moments that she felt truly alive, that she felt a sense of freedom she could not find anywhere else. The family often underestimated her in other ways too. They assumed she was not educated, not capable of understanding more than the simplest tasks. They assumed she would never have interests beyond cleaning, cooking, and serving. They did not see the careful way she observed them, The way she remembered details, the way she understood more than they realized. They did not see the quiet strength that kept her moving forward despite the ridicule and dismissal. She had learned to blend into the background, but she had also learned to watch, to listen, to understand the rhythm of life around her. Even on days when she felt small and overlooked, she found strength in her secret. Music reminded her that she had something the world could not take away. It reminded her that she had a gift, a talent that belonged entirely to her. She did not yet know how or when she would reveal it, but the thought of that possibility kept her going. Every sweep of the broom, every polish of the furniture, every careful movement through the house was done with patience and diligence, but also with the quiet hope that one day she would have her moment. The children sometimes made fun of her in small ways, pretending not to see her, whispering jokes, or laughing when she tripped over something. She did not retaliate. She knew their laughter was harmless, ignorant, and fleeting. She smiled at them gently, correcting small mistakes quietly, and kept moving. The adults' ridicule was sharper, more pointed, but she endured it in the same way with a faint smile and quiet diligence. She had learned early that anger or retaliation would not serve her. Patience and self-control were far more powerful tools. In her quiet moments, she imagined what it would be like if they could see the real her. She imagined them sitting in awe as her fingers danced across the piano keys, producing music that was beautiful, intricate, and full of emotion. She imagined the surprise in their eyes, the respect in their voices, and the change in the way they treated her. She held on to that vision as a secret motivation, a hidden flame that warmed her even on the longest, hardest days. Even though the house was large and full of life, she often felt alone. She moved from room to room, performing her tasks, observing quietly and avoiding attention. Yet in the solitude she found clarity. She could hear the smallest sounds, notice the tiniest details, and let her mind wander freely. Music became the thread that connected her inner world to the world around her. Every day she carried that thread carefully, weaving it into her life, keeping it safe until the right time. There were moments when she wondered if the day would ever come when her talent could be recognized. She wondered if people would ever see beyond her uniform, her role, and her quiet demeanor. But she did not despair. She knew that patience, perseverance, and quiet strength had their own rewards. She kept practicing in secret, keeping the music alive in her heart. She knew that the world could be harsh and dismissive, but she also knew that one day something might happen to change everything. For now, she continued her work with diligence and grace. She rose early, moved quietly, and performed each task with care. She smiled when it was required, kept her head down when it was not, and found solace in the secret moments near the piano. The world may have overlooked her, mocked her, and underestimated her, but she knew who she was in those quiet, precious moments, and that knowledge was enough to keep her moving forward, one day at a time, with quiet hope and patient strength. The days went on in their usual rhythm, with chores to complete, rooms to clean, and meals to prepare. She moved through the house like a quiet shadow, always aware of the eyes that sometimes followed her with amusement or judgment. Yet in those ordinary days there was a secret spark that kept her heart alive. The piano, which sat grandly in the living room, was no longer just an object of curiosity. It had become a silent companion, waiting patiently for the moment she could express the music that lived inside her. She had learned to observe the family closely, understanding their routines and moods. When the house was full of laughter and chatter, she would stay away from the piano, pretending not to notice it. But when the household settled into quiet, when the noise died down and only the soft hum of daily life remained, she would step near it. Her hands would hover over the keys, trembling slightly, not from fear but from anticipation. Music had been her private world for years, a language that no one else in the house spoke, and she cherished these moments more than anything else. Every touch of the keys felt like a whisper of her soul. She remembered the melodies she had learned long ago, the songs she had played in secret as a child. They came to her now with a freshness that filled her with wonder. Each note she pressed was a memory, a feeling, a hope. The music seemed to flow naturally from her fingertips, unforced, as if it had been waiting for this very moment to be heard. She closed her eyes, letting the sound wrap around her like a warm blanket, drowning out the harshness of the world outside the room. Her talent was not something she had displayed to others. It was her secret, her treasure. She had practiced in silence, with no audience, no praise, and no judgment. The discipline she had developed over years of secret practice allowed her fingers to move across the keys with ease. Complex passages, rapid scales, and delicate arpeggios came naturally to her. The piano did not demand perfection. It asked only for honesty, and she gave it everything she had. She sometimes imagined what it would be like if someone were to see her play. She pictured their surprise, the disbelief in their eyes, and the eventual admiration. But those were only daydreams, and she kept them locked away. The world outside the piano room was not ready for her music, or so she believed. Until the day was right, she would continue to hide her talent, nurturing it quietly, letting it grow like a hidden flower waiting for spring. One afternoon, as she was dusting the living room, she noticed a small group of children playing near the piano. Their laughter echoed across the polished floors, making her heart ache with both longing and caution. She wanted so badly to play, to let the music fill the space and wrap around them, but she stayed where she was, pretending to focus on her work. Instead, she allowed herself a small indulgence. She hummed softly, keeping the melody to herself, letting it ripple through her mind and remind her of the joy that music always brought. The piano, untouched by anyone else for days, seemed to call her name quietly. She took a deep breath, weighing the consequences. Would someone hear her? Would they mock her if they did? The thought made her hesitate, but the longing to play was stronger than the fear. She approached the instrument, feeling the smooth wood beneath her hands, the keys cool and inviting. She placed her fingers gently on the notes, testing a simple chord. It sounded as she remembered it, a sweet, resonant tone that seemed to welcome her back. She allowed herself to play a short piece, a melody that had been with her since childhood. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, each note carrying emotion and depth. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the world outside, forgetting the chores and the mocking glances she endured. The house seemed to breathe with her, the walls absorbing the sound and reflecting it back in a soft, harmonious echo. For the first time that day, she felt completely free, as if nothing and no one could touch her in this moment of pure expression. Even in these moments of secret joy, she remained vigilant. She knew that discovery could be both wonderful and dangerous. The family had never seen her in this light, and she worried about how they would react. Would they be impressed, surprised, or would they laugh, dismissing her as they had so many times before? The thought of judgment lingered at the edge of her mind, but she pushed it aside, focusing only on the music that poured from her heart. The piano became more than a companion. It was a teacher, a friend, a mirror of her soul. She experimented with different melodies, creating new harmonies and refining old ones. She discovered the nuances of expression, the power of silence between notes, the way a single pause could convey more than an entire phrase of music. Her confidence grew with each session, though always carefully guarded, like a delicate flame that needed protection from the wind. She remembered her childhood teacher's words. Music is not just about playing the right notes. It is about feeling them, living them. She took those words to heart, letting them guide her fingers and her imagination. Every chord she struck, every sequence she played was imbued with emotion. Joy, sorrow, longing, and hope flowed through her hands, telling stories she could not speak aloud. The piano became her voice, her way of communicating with the world even when no one was listening. She sometimes wondered about the life she could have had if circumstances were different. Perhaps she would have had formal lessons, opportunities to perform, and recognition for her talent. Yet she refused to dwell on regret. Instead, she focused on what she could do now in the present moment. Each day she practiced in secret was a step forward, a way to nurture her gift and prepare for the day when it could no longer remain hidden. One evening, after the family had retired to their rooms and the house settled into a quiet calm, she played longer than ever before. She explored a complex piece, her fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys. The music seemed to fill every corner of the room, resonating with a richness that surprised even her. She felt alive in a way that chores, laughter, or conversation could never give her. In those moments, she was not just a maid. She was a musician, an artist, and a storyteller. Despite the joy, a part of her remained cautious. The world outside her music was unpredictable, and she had learned that people could be cruel in their judgments. She kept her performances private, playing only when she was sure no one would interrupt. Yet she could not deny the thrill that came with the thought of someone discovering her talent. the possibility that her secret world might one day touch the lives of others. The family remained oblivious to her skill. They continued their routines, their laughter and mockery as usual. They had no idea that the quiet maid they overlooked and ridiculed possessed a gift that could move hearts and inspire awe. She observed them with a mixture of amusement and patience, knowing that one day, circumstances might align to reveal what she had always known, that her music was extraordinary, and it deserved to be heard. Her secret practice sessions became the highlight of her days. No matter how tiring the chores, how harsh the words, or how long the hours, she found energy and solace in the piano. She felt a deep connection to the instrument, as if it understood her struggles and her dreams. Each note she played strengthened her resolve, reminding her that talent, patience, and dedication could survive even in the most unlikely places. She began to notice subtle changes in herself. Her movements became more confident, her posture more assured, and her demeanor quieter but stronger. Music had given her a sense of purpose beyond the work she did, a reminder that she was capable of more than the world expected. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, even when others mocked her, knowing that her true self was growing in ways they could never see. In those days, the piano was more than wood and strings. It was a secret world where she could be herself. It was a place where she could dream, create, and express emotions too deep for words. Each session strengthened her belief that one day, her talent would not remain hidden forever. Until that moment came, she would continue her careful, patient journey, practicing in secret, nurturing the gift that had been a part of her since childhood, and keeping alive the hope that one day her music would change everything. The day began like any other, with her moving quietly through the house, attending to her chores with the careful precision that had become her habit. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting patterns on the polished floors, and she went about her work, mindful of every step, every motion. She could hear the distant chatter of the family and their guests as they prepared for the afternoon gathering, a small event that would bring laughter, conversation, and the occasional playful teasing. She tried to stay out of sight, focusing on her tasks, but she could not help but notice the grand piano standing in the living room, its polished surface reflecting the sunlight, as if it were silently inviting her to play. As the guests arrived and the house filled with voices, she moved with practiced efficiency, serving drinks, straightening cushions, and arranging small details that no one else seemed to notice. The family and their friends laughed and joked, their attention elsewhere, unaware of her presence except when she was needed. She smiled faintly, keeping her head down, feeling the familiar sting of being overlooked and underestimated. Even when she was teased or mocked for small mistakes, she held herself steady, letting the words slide off her like water on glass. She had learned long ago that patience and quiet strength were her allies, and she relied on them now more than ever. The children, always curious and playful, were running around the living room, their laughter filling the air. One of them, noticing her lingering near the piano, nudged another and whispered something that made them both giggle. She could feel their eyes on her, but she continued to move calmly, keeping her hands busy with a tray of refreshments. Her heart, however, betrayed a small flicker of desire. She wanted to sit at the piano and play, to let the music fill the room and perhaps even surprise them, but caution kept her rooted in place. She knew their laughter might not come from curiosity alone. It could easily turn into ridicule, and she was not ready for that. Then came the moment she had been both dreading and secretly hoping for. One of the guests, a young man with a mischievous smile, glanced at her as she passed and said in a teasing tone, "I wonder if she can even play that piano. Maybe she'll make it sound funny for us." Laughter followed his words, light and mocking, directed at her. She felt her cheeks flush, but she did not respond. Instead, she carried on, taking a deep breath and reminding herself that her talent was hers alone, a treasure they could not touch. Yet in the back of her mind, a tiny spark of defiance began to grow. If they expected failure, perhaps it was time to show them something they would never forget. The room seemed to hold its breath as she approached the piano. The children stopped their play, curiosity replacing their laughter. The adults glanced at her, some with surprise, some with amusement, expecting her to fumble or make a mistake. She hesitated for a brief moment, her hands hovering above the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingertips. She could hear the faintest echo of the melody she had practiced countless times in secret. the notes forming a bridge between her private world and the audience that awaited her performance. With a deep breath, she allowed her fingers to touch the keys. The first note was soft, tentative, a gentle testing of the waters. A hush fell over the room, the laughter dying away as the unexpected sound filled the space. She closed her eyes, letting the music take over, each note flowing naturally from her heart. The melody she played was delicate at first, then gained strength, weaving through the room like a living, breathing entity. The audience, caught off guard, watched in silent fascination, unable to believe what they were hearing. The mocking expressions vanished, replaced by astonishment and growing admiration. As she played, she could feel the power of the music resonating through her, connecting her to the room, to the people who had underestimated her for so long. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, each note carrying emotion, depth, and a story of its own. The children leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder, while the adults exchanged glances, their surprise evident. The grand piano, once a silent observer of her secret practice, now became the stage for a revelation that no one could ignore. She allowed herself to become fully immersed in the music, forgetting the past ridicule, forgetting the doubts, and letting her talent shine. The melody swelled and softened, rose and fell, guiding the listeners through a journey of feeling and imagination. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from the exhilaration of sharing something so intimate, so profoundly her own. The room seemed transformed, the air charged with the magic of the unexpected performance. As the final notes lingered in the air, a silence followed that felt almost sacred. The family and guests were still, their eyes fixed on her, their mouths slightly open in disbelief. The moment of mockery had passed, replaced by awe and respect. For the first time in that house, they truly saw her not as a maid to be dismissed, but as a person with extraordinary talent, someone who could move hearts and command attention with nothing more than her hands and the piano keys. The children were the first to react, their laughter now of genuine delight rather than teasing. They clapped and cheered, their eyes sparkling with excitement. The adults followed, some hesitant at first, then with increasing enthusiasm, offering praise and admiration. A few of the family members looked at one another, a mixture of guilt and wonder crossing their faces. They had underestimated her for so long, and now they could not deny the brilliance that had always been there, hidden beneath the quiet exterior. She opened her eyes, feeling the warmth of their recognition, but she remained humble. Her performance had been for herself as much as for them, a celebration of the talent that had sustained her through years of hard work and quiet observation. She allowed herself a small smile, acknowledging their applause while keeping the core of her being intact. The music had spoken where words could not, and it had made them see her in a way they never had before. The guests, still amazed, whispered to one another, trying to comprehend what they had witnessed. How could someone so quiet, so unassuming, possess such skill? How could they have overlooked her for so long? The questions hung in the air, unspoken but understood, a testament to the transformative power of her music. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not from the attention itself, but from the knowledge that she had finally revealed a piece of herself that had long been hidden. For the rest of the afternoon, the atmosphere in the house shifted. People treated her differently, with newfound respect and curiosity. They asked questions, complimented her skill, and in some cases apologized for past mockery. She accepted their words graciously, but she did not let them define her. She had always known her worth, and now the world around her was beginning to recognize it. The piano, silent once again, seemed to stand as a witness to the change, its keys holding the echoes of a moment that would not be forgotten. Even as the evening drew near and the guests began to leave, she reflected on what had happened. The day had started like any other, filled with routine and expectation, but it had ended with a revelation that would shape the rest of her life. She realized that talent, when nurtured with patience and dedication, could not remain hidden forever. The laughter that had once stung now seemed distant and insignificant, replaced by the memory of astonished faces and the power of music to transform perception. That night, as she prepared to rest, she thought about the journey ahead. The world had seen a glimpse of her true self, and she knew that opportunities and challenges would follow. Yet she felt ready, strengthened by the knowledge that her secret world of music had not only survived but had flourished, even under the shadow of mockery and doubt. The piano, a steadfast companion, had become the bridge between who she was and who she could become, and she drifted to sleep with a sense of anticipation and quiet joy, knowing that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The room was quiet now, the laughter and teasing long gone, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. She sat at the piano, hands poised above the keys, feeling a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. The first few notes came gently, almost shyly, as if testing the waters. But as she continued, her confidence grew, and the music began to flow freely, filling every corner of the room with its presence. Each note carried emotion, telling a story that words could not capture. It was a melody both delicate and powerful, gentle yet commanding, and it held the attention of everyone present. The children, who had been watching with wide eyes, leaned closer, mesmerized by the movement of her fingers and the beauty of the sound. The adults, too, were silent, their previous mockery forgotten, replaced with astonishment. The skill and passion evident in every phrase made it impossible to look away. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that this quiet maid who had gone unnoticed, who had been laughed at and underestimated, possessed a talent beyond their comprehension. Her playing grew more intricate, moving through a series of variations and harmonies that seemed both natural and inspired. She was not merely pressing keys. She was telling a story, conveying feelings that resonated deeply. The melody swelled and softened, rose and fell, creating a landscape of sound that captured attention and imagination alike. Her hands moved with grace and precision, each finger knowing exactly where to go, each chord chosen with care to enhance the emotion of the piece. The audience watched, spellbound. Some covered their mouths in surprise, others leaned forward, unable to contain their awe. Every note seemed to have a life of its own, echoing in the room and in the hearts of those who listened. She could feel their energy, their astonishment, and it only fueled her playing. The music was no longer just a private world. It was a bridge connecting her to the people who had never understood her before. She felt the power of her talent, the realization that her secret could not only inspire herself but also move others in ways she had never imagined. As she played, memories of her past practice sessions surfaced, reminding her of the years of dedication, secrecy, and patience. Each hour of silent study, each private moment near the piano had led to this one performance. It was a culmination of her life's quiet work, and it filled her with both pride and humility. She knew that she had waited for the right moment, and now that moment had arrived. She let herself be fully immersed in the music, losing track of time, of expectations, of fear. There was only her and the piano, and the story she was telling through the notes. She moved seamlessly through the composition, shifting between tempos and dynamics with ease. Soft passages invited quiet reflection, while bold sections demanded attention and respect. The variations flowed naturally, as if the music itself were alive and guiding her hands. The audience remained captivated, some with tears in their eyes, others with expressions of wonder and admiration. It was a moment of revelation, a display of hidden depth that left no doubt about her extraordinary ability. The children whispered among themselves, amazed that someone they had seen so often could produce such magnificent sounds. The adults, too, struggled to find words, their previous judgments completely overturned by what they were witnessing. The music had revealed something essential about her, something they had failed to see before: her talent, her passion, and her capacity to touch hearts. Each chord she struck seemed to affirm a truth that had long been hidden, a truth that demanded recognition and respect. She experimented with subtle improvisations, blending the melody with new harmonies and rhythms that added complexity and richness. Her fingers moved confidently, intuitively, as if they knew the music better than her conscious mind did. Each variation brought fresh emotions to the surface, drawing the audience deeper into the experience. The room seemed to vibrate with the sound, the walls reflecting the resonance of her performance, and everyone present felt the impact of something rare and profound. As the piece reached its climax, the intensity and passion were undeniable. The music filled every corner of the room, commanding attention, demanding acknowledgement. She poured herself into each note, expressing feelings that had been held inside for years: joy, sorrow, hope, and longing. Her playing was no longer just a demonstration of skill. It was a revelation of her spirit, an unveiling of a hidden world that few had the chance to witness. When the final notes lingered in the air, the room remained silent for a moment, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Then slowly the applause began, At first tentative, then growing louder and more enthusiastic, it filled the space with energy and affirmation. The children clapped and cheered, their faces lit with joy and amazement. The adults, too, joined in, their previous mockery replaced with genuine admiration and respect. Some whispered to each other in disbelief, unable to fully comprehend the transformation they had just witnessed. She allowed herself a small, humble smile, acknowledging their appreciation without letting it define her. Her performance had been for herself as much as for them, a statement of who she truly was and the dedication she had maintained in silence for so long. The piano had given her a voice when no one else had listened, and now that voice had been heard. She felt a sense of fulfillment and joy that was hard to describe, a quiet triumph that came from staying true to herself and her gift. The family members exchanged glances, some showing signs of guilt for underestimating her, others simply amazed by the display of talent. They approached her cautiously, unsure of how to express their newfound respect. She received their compliments with grace, acknowledging their words while keeping her sense of humility intact. The performance had changed the way they saw her, and she could feel the shift in their attitudes, a recognition of her worth that had long been denied. After the applause had settled, she remained at the piano for a few quiet moments, letting the final vibrations of the notes fade into the room. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the years of secret practice, the patience, the resilience, and the belief in her own abilities, despite constant doubt and ridicule. This performance was not just a moment of triumph. It was a turning point, a statement that her talent was undeniable and that her dedication had finally borne fruit. The children lingered nearby, their excitement palpable, asking questions and sharing their amazement. The adults, too, engaged with her in a new way, their curiosity and admiration evident. Conversations that had previously overlooked her now centered on her talent, and she felt a sense of belonging and recognition that had been absent for so long. The piano had become a bridge, connecting her hidden world with the lives of those around her, transforming not just the room but the way she was perceived. Even after the gathering ended, the memory of the performance lingered. She continued to feel the energy of the music in her fingertips, a reminder that her gift was real, powerful, and deserving of attention. She knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where her talent could no longer remain hidden. The world had glimpsed what she had always known about herself, and the experience strengthened her resolve to continue pursuing her passion with dedication and humility. That night, as she prepared for rest, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The day had started like any other, filled with routine and expectation, but it had ended with a revelation that would change the course of her life. She understood that her talent, nurtured through patience and dedication, could not remain hidden forever. The piano had given her a voice, and the world had finally listened. She drifted to sleep with a sense of hope and anticipation, ready for the journey that lay ahead, knowing that her music had the power to touch hearts and transform lives. The day after her performance, the atmosphere in the house had changed completely. She moved through the rooms with the same quiet grace, but now the eyes that had once ignored her or looked down on her were filled with curiosity, and in some cases admiration. Even the children who had previously teased her now watched her with a mixture of wonder and respect. She kept to her duties, cleaning, organizing, and preparing meals, but there was a lightness to her steps that had not been there before. The world around her felt different, as though her secret music had shifted the way everyone perceived her. Throughout the morning, small gestures of recognition appeared. The family members she served no longer gave curt nods or dismissive remarks. Instead, they offered polite smiles, some accompanied by words of encouragement. One of the adults, hesitant at first, remarked on how beautiful her playing had been, noting the skill and emotion she had displayed. She smiled in return, feeling warmth at the acknowledgement, but she did not let it overwhelm her. She knew that respect had to be earned through continued patience and dedication, and she remained focused on her work. Later in the day, a guest who had attended the gathering the previous evening returned briefly, carrying a small notebook and pen. He had jotted down a few of the melodies he remembered, fascinated by the way she had played. He approached her cautiously, unsure if it was appropriate to speak directly. "Your music. It was incredible," he said quietly. "I had never heard anything like it. Have you had lessons?" She shook her head gently, her fingers brushing against the keys of the piano that stood nearby. "No," she replied softly. I taught myself. The guest looked astonished. The idea that someone could reach such skill without formal instruction seemed impossible, yet the evidence of her talent was undeniable. They spoke for a few minutes, sharing their fascination and respect, and she felt a sense of connection she had never experienced before. Word of her talent spread slowly through the household, carried by whispers and conversations. The children proudly recounted their experience to friends and neighbors, their eyes wide with excitement. The adults spoke among themselves, expressing surprise and admiration for someone they had so often underestimated. She watched quietly, understanding that recognition did not always come all at once and that patience was still important. Yet she could feel the tide turning, a subtle shift that affirmed her value and skill. One of the family members approached her later that afternoon with a thoughtful expression. "You have a gift," they said, looking her in the eye. "We never realized it before, but it's extraordinary. Have you ever considered performing outside the house?" She paused, contemplating the idea. The thought of sharing her music with a wider audience was both exciting and intimidating. She had always cherished her private practice, the moments when music belonged only to her. Yet the possibility of reaching others, of inspiring them and being recognized for her dedication, stirred something within her. She nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of anticipation and caution. The children, full of curiosity, asked her to play again. She agreed, this time with a calm confidence she had not felt before. As she played, she noticed the joy in their faces, the way their eyes lit up with amazement. She realized that her music had a power beyond her imagination. It could bring happiness, inspire wonder, and create connection. The experience reinforced her desire to continue pursuing her passion, to explore the depths of her ability, and to share it in ways that could touch others. Over the following days, small opportunities began to appear. The family arranged for her to meet a music teacher who had expressed interest in hearing more of her playing. The teacher, impressed by her natural ability and understanding of complex compositions, offered guidance and instruction to help refine her technique. She accepted, eager to learn and improve, yet determined to maintain her humility and focus on the joy of music, rather than fame or recognition. Each lesson, each moment of practice strengthened her confidence and expanded her understanding of the art she had loved for so long. Her life within the house began to shift subtly. Tasks that had once been monotonous now felt lighter, accompanied by the awareness of her talent and the respect she had earned. Conversations with the family became more engaging, as they began to treat her as someone with knowledge and skill, not just a servant. They asked her opinions, sought her insights, and in some cases apologized for underestimating her in the past. She accepted their words with quiet grace, understanding that transformation was a process and that patience remained her ally. She also found her own sense of self evolving. The recognition of her talent, the encouragement of the music teacher, and the admiration of the children and adults alike reinforced her belief in her abilities. She no longer felt invisible or undervalued. The piano had always been her sanctuary, but now it was also a platform, a bridge between her private world and the wider one. She approached her practice with renewed energy, exploring new pieces, refining techniques, and experimenting with her own compositions. Each session strengthened her skill and deepened her connection to the music that had carried her through so many lonely and challenging moments. One evening, the family gathered once again in the living room, this time inviting her to play for them intentionally. They had arranged a small informal performance. Eager to experience the music that had captivated them before, she approached the piano with calm determination, her fingers poised over the keys. As she played, she felt the familiar thrill of expressing herself, of allowing her emotions and stories to flow through the music. The audience listened intently, their expressions reflecting a mixture of admiration, wonder, and appreciation. She realized that this was no longer a secret. Her talent was acknowledged, celebrated, and valued. The recognition she received extended beyond admiration. The music teacher encouraged her to consider public performances, offering guidance on how to approach opportunities outside the household. The family expressed willingness to support her ambitions, arranging small gatherings where she could showcase her talent to a wider audience. These developments filled her with a mixture of excitement and cautious optimism. She had always cherished her private practice, but now she saw the potential for her music to reach and inspire others. The thought of touching lives with her talent filled her with a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Despite the growing recognition, she remained grounded and humble. She continued her daily tasks with the same diligence, balancing her responsibilities with her passion for music. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, discipline, and patience were equally important. Each day she practiced, learned, and reflected, finding ways to grow as a musician while maintaining her integrity and humility. Her life was changing, but she navigated the transformation with care, ensuring that her character remained true to who she had always been. The transformation in the household was also visible. The family treated her with respect, acknowledging her opinions and seeking her input. The children looked up to her with admiration, no longer seeing her as someone to be teased, but as a role model and inspiration. The adults, too, adjusted their behavior, offering support, encouragement, and sometimes even mentorship. The dynamics of the household shifted subtly, creating an environment where talent and effort were recognized and celebrated, rather than overlooked or ridiculed. Through these experiences, she discovered a new sense of confidence and self-worth. She realized that her journey had been long and challenging, but it had also prepared her for the opportunities and recognition she was beginning to receive. The years of quiet practice, patience, and perseverance had built a foundation that could not be shaken by judgment or doubt. Her music was not just a skill, it was a reflection of her character, resilience, and passion. As the days turned into weeks, she continued to refine her craft, embracing the guidance of her teacher, the encouragement of the family, and the joy of performing for those who appreciated her talent. Each performance, each lesson, each small recognition reinforced her sense of purpose and strengthened her belief in the power of dedication and perseverance. She understood that this was only the beginning of a journey that could take her far beyond the walls of the household. Yet she remained grateful for the foundation that had nurtured her growth. By the end of this period, she had become more than just the quiet maid who moved silently through the house. She was a respected musician, admired and celebrated for her extraordinary talent. Her life had been transformed, not by luck or chance, but by her own persistence, passion, and resilience. The piano, once a secret companion, had become a bridge to recognition, a tool for connection, and a symbol of her journey. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music had the power to touch hearts, inspire others, and reshape the way she was seen in the world around her. Life after her remarkable performances began to change in ways she had never imagined. The recognition she had received in the household opened doors that were once completely closed to her. Every day, as she moved through the house performing her chores, she noticed the subtle shifts in the way people treated her. The laughter that once mocked her was replaced with polite conversation, and the dismissive glances were now thoughtful looks of appreciation. Even strangers, when they saw her perform at small gatherings arranged by the family, could sense the depth of her talent and the dedication she had shown over the years. Her music began to attract attention beyond the house. Neighbors, friends of friends, and acquaintances who had heard of her skill requested that she play at events or small local gatherings. Each invitation filled her with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had spent so many years keeping her talent private that the idea of performing in front of a larger audience was both thrilling and intimidating. Yet she remembered the joy and confidence that playing the piano had always given her, and she approached these opportunities with determination and care. The piano remained at the center of her world. Each practice session reinforced her confidence and skill. She experimented with new compositions, blending the classical techniques she had taught herself with subtle innovations. She discovered through experience and guidance from the music teacher the family had introduced her to. Her fingers moved with grace and precision, each note a testament to the years of dedication she had poured into her craft. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was her voice, her companion, and the key to a future she was only beginning to imagine. Her life within the household transformed as well. The family who had once underestimated her now regarded her with respect and admiration. They sought her input on decisions, asked her for advice, and encouraged her to pursue opportunities outside the home. The children who had once teased her now looked to her as a role model, inspired by her talent, humility, and perseverance. The small household, once a place of routine and unnoticed effort, became a space where her abilities were recognized and nurtured. The music teacher continued to play a crucial role in her growth. With every lesson, she refined her technique, learned to interpret music with greater depth, and explored new genres and styles. The teacher's guidance was invaluable, but she never lost her humility. She remained dedicated to her practice, understanding that talent alone was not enough. Hard work, discipline, and continuous learning were essential to growth. Each day brought new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to expand her abilities. Opportunities to perform in larger venues gradually emerged. Community centers, local events, and small concert halls opened their doors to her, eager to experience the talent that had once been hidden from the world. Each performance built her confidence, strengthened her reputation, and allowed her to connect with audiences in ways she had never imagined. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music could touch the hearts of people she had never met, bridging gaps and creating shared experiences through the power of sound. As she continued to grow in skill and recognition, she remained grounded in her character. She never allowed praise or attention to change her sense of self. She continued to perform with humility, focusing on the joy of music and the connection it created, rather than seeking fame or approval. Her dedication to her craft and her quiet, patient nature became part of the admiration others held for her. She was respected not only for her talent but for her integrity, perseverance, and the grace with which she carried herself. Her story inspired those around her. Friends, neighbors, and the children in the household began to see the value of hard work, dedication, and believing in oneself despite challenges. She became a living example that talent could flourish even in unlikely circumstances, and that patience and persistence could lead to extraordinary outcomes. The respect she earned went beyond her musical abilities. It reflected the character she had nurtured through years of quiet resilience. Over time, she began to teach younger students, sharing her knowledge and love for the piano with those eager to learn. Her teaching was patient, encouraging, and filled with understanding. She remembered her own journey, the years of secret practice, and the moments when encouragement and guidance had been scarce. She wanted to give her students not only musical skills but also the confidence and belief that they, too, could achieve great things if they persisted and dedicated themselves to their passion. Her performances continued to draw attention, sometimes to larger audiences, but she maintained the same humility and focus that had always defined her. Each concert, each small gathering, each intimate performance was approached with dedication and sincerity. She understood that her talent was a gift to be shared, and she embraced the responsibility and opportunity to touch lives through her music. The household that had once been a place of unnoticed effort and quiet labor now became a center of recognition and support. The family, proud of her accomplishments, encouraged her to pursue larger goals and even connected her with individuals who could provide further opportunities for growth. Their change in attitude was gradual but genuine, a reflection of the respect they had developed for her skill and character. She accepted their support with grace, understanding that collaboration and encouragement were important in nurturing talent. Through it all, she never forgot the quiet beginnings of her journey. She remembered the years of private practice, the moments when she would sit alone at the piano and lose herself in music, the small victories and tiny breakthroughs that had shaped her path. These memories grounded her, reminding her of the importance of patience, dedication, and self-belief. Her talent had always been extraordinary, but it was her resilience and humility that allowed it to flourish and touch the lives of others. As her reputation grew, she began to receive invitations to perform in more formal settings, including local festivals and cultural events. Each performance was approached with the same dedication she had shown from the very beginning. She understood that her music was a bridge, connecting her inner world with the hearts of those who listened. She focused on conveying emotion, telling stories through sound, and creating experiences that transcended words. Her ability to touch people deeply became her hallmark, and her reputation as a talented and humble musician spread. Despite her growing success, she remained grounded in her roots. The household where she had spent years working and practicing in secret remained important to her. She continued to contribute, care for the space, and engage with those who had once underestimated her. The transformation of her life did not make her forget the lessons of patience, humility, and perseverance that had shaped her character. She balanced her growing recognition with the stability and Grounding that had been nurtured over years of quiet dedication, her journey became an inspiration not only to those in the household, but to the broader community. People who had heard of her story marveled at the transformation from a quiet maid to a celebrated pianist. She demonstrated that talent could flourish anywhere, that perseverance could overcome adversity, and that recognition could follow dedication and hard work. Her life became a testament to the power of patience, passion, and resilience. In her private moments, she still returned to the piano as she had always done. The instrument remained her sanctuary, a place where she could explore, create, and express herself freely. She continued to compose, experiment, and refine her skills, understanding that mastery was a lifelong journey. Each note she played carried the story of her past, the joy of her present, and the hope of a future shaped by dedication and love for music. By the end of this journey, she had transformed completely, not just in the eyes of the household or community, but in her own understanding of herself. She was no longer the quiet, overlooked maid. She was a confident, skilled musician, respected and admired for her talent, character, and perseverance. Her life had changed in ways that exceeded her expectations, and yet she remained humble, grounded, and focused on the essence of her passion, the music that had carried her through years of quiet struggle and would continue to guide her into the future. She had become a symbol of resilience and talent, showing that recognition and opportunity come to those who nurture their gifts with dedication and patience. Her story inspired others to believe in themselves, to persevere through difficulties, and to embrace their passions no matter how hidden or overlooked they might be. She had transformed her life through her talent, and in doing so she had touched the lives of everyone around her, leaving a lasting impression of courage, humility, and the power of music.